Hello and welcome to Outdoors and That. Today I'm going to be reviewing a DHM, which has now become Manigum Outdoors, which has now ceased to exist, Hikelite 60 litre backpack. So the reason I wanted to do this review is there's plenty of these kicking around online secondhand, and they are very popular, or have been very popular in Australia with scouts and some smaller outdoor ed programs, schools, etc. So what are the features of this pack? Should you buy one secondhand? Start with, this is the more modern version, and they change materials between these versions, between becoming Manigum Outdoors and DHM. And the old packs used to be made out of the same material, which you can see on the top of this section and on the back side of the hood. And that polyester material was really tough, really durable, and lasted really well. It also held the stitching quite well, and I'll show you that in a moment. This new material, it's much softer, it's a lighter material, but it's not as durable. The actual, potential for getting a hole in this is pretty small, but the stitching doesn't seem to hold nearly as well as it did as the old materials that these packs were made out of. Overall, it's one of the cheapest packs you can get out in Australia, and as a result, you get what you pay for to some degree. But there are some things I wanted to point out if you come across a second-hand one, or you are looking for a pack like this. So it's got all your usual features: pocket down the bottom, top loading in the hood. It has a zip pocket underneath and on top. That's all really good, really handy. This version doesn't have extra loops around the bottom for carrying gear on the outside of your pack, but it does have loops on the side for strapping things on the side of your pack. They're also quite wide down the bottom in this newer version. The older ones had a much narrower profile all the way through, but overall pretty good design there. It's got all the features you'd expect to see on a regular backpack. With the difference between the materials, I'll just bring up some of the seams here, and when we look at a seam, a really good way of testing how strong the seam is to put it under a bit of pressure, and you can see this seam stretches right out along that joint, and you can even see the stitching holes there. So this new material hasn't got the ability to hold the stitching nearly as well as the older packs did. And I can show you, because we've got both the materials here up the top. When I separate this seam out, we can see it's much more stiff and harder to pull the seam apart, but also it doesn't open up and stretch nearly as much as this new material. Other thing with the harness, just giving you a close-up in here, when we undo this, we're just looping our piece of material up through those loops, but the stitching is really relying on that last stitch on either side of that, because we're pulling on an upwards force. Just checking that this part of the pack is in good condition is going to be really important for you before you buy your backpack. Other thing about these more modern ones is how much foam is in the harness. So the more foam that you have in your harness, the more water that can collect if it does get wet, and that will make the pack quite heavy as a result of that. The last thing is, it doesn't have a rain cover, and this material is not a waterproof material. This version is not what I'd say to get as your very first backpack. The version before, go for it. I think that's good. It's made out of the different materials, and that makes a really huge difference to how long this pack is going to last. But for the price, it'll do you a few hikes, and maybe you'll find out if you like hiking and want to buy something for the rest of your life.